If you're actually getting in and you're getting started and you're ready to jump in and you're ready to spend some money, I think it's important to sit down, understand what your company's goals are, and how much money you're willing to spend to accomplish those goals.
You're listening to Content Logistics,
a podcast for B2B marketers where we explore the foundational
and sometimes frustrating elements of content.
We're talking to the experts, learning all their tips and tricks, and sharing them with you.
We don't gatekeep here. Let's get started.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Logistics. I'm your host, Dallion, and I have Baylee here with me today. We have a really exciting topic that we're going to get into. We are going to talk about money, my favorite kind of money, other people's money to spend. And we have a really exciting guest on with us today. Her name is Jenna Quick, and she is a Google Ads expert in digital marketing. We're going to talk today about how to get started doing Google Ads as a small, scrappy marketer who's in B2B, and just like what are some common pitfalls that you can avoid? What are some of the easiest ways to get started? And some tips and tricks from somebody who has been doing this for almost a decade.
Yeah, we're really excited to have Jenna on. She has a lot of experience in this area. She's helped me and Dallion out personally quite a bit with things. We ourselves are not Google Ads experts. However, we do work with specialists at our company who are really the ones that run the Google Ads accounts at our business. The big reason we're talking about this today is because we get so many questions for our clients about how to run successful Google Ads campaigns. When we see these common pitfalls because they're running usually these campaigns on their own and they ask for help here on our end. And it really plays into especially the content aspect, because when you're running a Google Ads campaign, you're not just bidding on keywords, you are directing them to a landing page that needs to convert, or whatever your goals are, whether you're just trying to get clicks. And we want to make sure that the content you're driving to is really successful and valuable to the people that you're getting to your website. So that's something we're going to talk about today as well. And we're just really excited to have Jenna here. Welcome, Jenna.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
So we know that you're a Google Ads expert, but why would you recommend Google Ads for B2B companies?
There are a number of reasons why B2B SaaS companies should really get into the Google Ads space. You have a unique opportunity to get in front of potential clients or potential customers. And so once you have an established advertising budget, it's a good way to, one, increase brand awareness. Two, it's a good way to, like I said, reach those potential customers. And then you also have an opportunity to really make your product or service visible.
What are some of like the lowest level, like easiest tips and things to know if you're not an expert in this, but you want to play around?
When I was getting started, a big part of the resources that I used were Google Skills Shop. And with Google Skills Shop, you can actually go in, take free courses to learn about the program and how the platform works and the different types of bidding that you have. There's also different ad types, right? Because you have shopping ads, measurement ads, paid search ads, display, video, all of that. And so there's individualized courses that'll help you walk through how to do those things. And then there's like an assessment, if you will, or a test at the end to help you get certified. And so this would be the easiest thing that you could do. Another thing would be looking at other resources that they have online. So use resources like WordStream. They have a lot of really good ebooks and resources about Google Ads, and it's super helpful. So that's where I would start if you're somebody getting used to the platform, trying to learn a little bit more about it. But if you're actually getting in and you're getting started and you're ready to jump in and you're ready to spend some money, I think it's important to sit down, understand what your company's goals are and how much money you're willing to spend to accomplish those goals. So if you're looking at it from a brand perspective and you want to just get some, added reach, I would focus on impression share, right? You want to bid on the right keywords to get you in front of the right audience and get as much volume as possible. And then from there, I would go into clicks and then conversions.
I remember I've actually done those skill shop tests So, but that was a couple years back. And I remember I just did them because I thought it would be really helpful. And I didn't have any really clients that I was doing them for. So it all just, I forgot like everything I've learned in those. So I think kind of what you said, pairing the two together of doing the courses and actually getting hands-on experience, especially if you could just start even with a small budget so you can play around and really see what works for whatever company you're working with and just to get started.
Yes, absolutely.
Going back to the budgets, Jenna, what are the different formats that you would recommend for like different budget types? So we know that there's image ads, they can do text ads, video ads. There's a lot that can be done. And I think everyone knows that you need to do paid advertising. But the question is, how to do it well and how to do it right. And so what are your thoughts around the different budgets and the different formats that could be used?
Yeah, so I think given the economy and the way things are right now, paid search is probably my number one suggestion because you're going to get a lot of impression share. You can bid on specific keywords. Search terms are really popular. And so like if you have some high volume search terms, your ads will populate, even if you're not spending a significant amount of money. Now you might have to compete for those spots, but there's an opportunity to at least be somewhat visible. And I think that's important. And I think depending on the budget that you have, you should always be running paid search campaigns. And I think some people might disagree with me, but paid search for me has always been extremely successful from a brand. And then from a content standpoint, I've had very successful content strategy campaigns from paid. I've had like display campaigns that were super successful. But really, I think when you have a small budget, you have limited resources. There's limited amount of time because your budget's going to run out very fast. And so I think it's important to do something that's not going to cost a whole lot of money and still get you some of that reach that you're looking for. So paid search would be for the smaller budgets. As you get into more of a medium budget or a larger budget, I think you can test more things, right? So A/B testing in paid ads is super important. You want to test things like copy, headlines, descriptions. You want to test landing pages, and understanding what works best for you and what works best for your business is like, this is when you can do it, right? Because you have more money to do it and more money to spend. And so you want to be intentional. You want to be responsible with that money because, like you said, you're spending somebody else's money. If you're not doing it for yourself, or like if you hire somebody internally to run these for you, like you have to be very careful, right? Because you have a direct impact on revenue, on company revenue. And so figuring out what works and testing and iterating is so important. And the medium to larger budgets, you have a lot more opportunity, more resources. You can get creative. You can do display ads, video ads. You could have a higher production value for things. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I would start.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to have, kind of keep it small and keep it simple. And so that you're not spreading your dollars across too many things, especially if the dollars are limited. Speaking of bidding, we've talked about bidding a couple different times. I want to kind of break down what might be the different bidding strategies that you'd recommend for these, small, medium, large budgets. What does that look like? And what's the easiest way to understand bidding strategies?
Yes. So there are several bidding strategies. I think Google likes to update these more than they should. But lately, in the last few years, target ROAS has been a really big goal for a lot of companies. And target ROAS is return on ad spend. So really, you're trying to establish and maximize your ROI. And you're looking at this mostly from a conversion perspective. And so you have to have a certain number of conversions in the Google Ads platform for target ROAS to be really beneficial to your overall goals. And so that is something I'd recommend for somebody who's been in the platform. They've been running ads for a while. They have that conversion data to back up these numbers. And then, so that's where I would go for that. Now, when we're backtracking or starting at the beginning, I would do sort of either a manual CPC, so a manual cost per click, or just a maximized clicks campaign. And so those is like you're trying to get as many clicks as possible on your ads. And with a manual CPC, you can choose how much you're willing to spend on specific keywords. So I think that's a really good starting point to where you can actually bid on more keywords without maxing out your budget super quickly. And then you have other like automated bidding strategies. You can do maximize conversions, target impression share. It really just depends on your goals as a company. So if you're looking for brand, I would do impression and clicks. If you're looking for conversions, I would do target CPA and maximize conversions. Target CPA is cost per acquisition, so how much you're willing to pay for a lead. And then if you're spending a whole bunch of money, you have conversion data to back up your goals, I would say target ROAS is where you should probably go.
One of the things that I think people get hung up on is having so many options. And so I was excited to have this conversation with you all, because I know we see this. It's like you're going in there's a lot of different directions to go in. And then you have, different people who want to see different things within your company internally, and you just have different options. And so I'm really glad that we're having this conversation so that we can talk through some of the different avenues to go down. What are some of the pitfalls that you've seen, Jenna? Like, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make?
Oh boy. Yeah. So some common pitfalls I've seen is people tend to get really excited about advertising. They're it's kind of like a love-hate thing. You either really want to get into it and you're really excited about it, or you're dreading it and you hate the idea, right? Because you don't want to waste money. That is number one. You want to be as efficient as possible. And so getting the most for your money is important. And I think campaign setup is massive pitfall that I've seen. So if your campaigns are not structured from start to finish, then you'll have problems, right? You'll run into like keyword overlap. You'll run into your campaigns are kind of all over the place, and you don't want that. So when you're building a campaign, you want to start with the campaign itself, and then you want to build out the ad group and make sure that's structured. And then you want to build out your ads for each ad group and make sure those are structured. Make sure your keywords are grouped in specific groups. Make sure you have your campaign set up correctly. Make sure your conversion tracking is set up correctly. That's another pitfall that I've seen a lot, is if your conversion tracking is not set up correctly, then you run into inaccurate reporting and inaccurate data. So those are two really big ones that I've seen in my experience.
I agree with the conversion tracking one. That is something that with almost every client I have is not set up properly when we get the account. And I just feel bad when I get it, because I feel like they maybe wasted a little bit of money, or they just don't have very accurate data on what they currently have running.
Yeah. Well, and I think that something that I've seen with my clients, and we can get into this next, is mostly like an issue with conversion. We're actually getting people to the landing page, like getting them all the way to the door, and then they're not converting. And so when we're talking about content and, once the action is taken, what are some things that you see there? What are some tips that we can give people, food for thought around the kind of content that converts? Because I think there's a lot there that could work for different companies.
Yeah, so there's a couple of parts to this. So when you're looking at landing pages in your Google ads, you want to make sure that these pages are first and foremost easy to navigate and super simple. You want to get right to the point and get people in the door. If you give them too much information, or if you give them too much to look at, or it's not easy to navigate, then I find people bounce really fast. Like they want to click off and they want to find something else. Or then it's like, okay, well, why did I spend the ad dollars? They'll just come back to my website, or maybe they're not interested, or, and that goes back to the inaccurate data. And so I think with landing page setup, you should, again, keep it simple. Make sure your form is readily available at the top. You're actually judged by Google Ads on the state of your landing page. And so if they determine that your landing page isn't good, it'll actually drop your ad strength. So making sure that you fit within Google's criteria, especially for a performance marketing landing page, is extremely important.
I think that there's a temptation to maybe put too much on that page, because you feel like, oh, you've got the opportunity to show them all the things that you're excited about for your company, for your brand. But I think it's probably a common pitfall for marketers to want to do too much on that landing page. And so I think it's a good call out to say, like, actually scale back. It reminds me of like when you click on a blog article or when you click on a video that has a certain headline and you're expecting to see the thing that was advertised to you. And it can be off-putting when you click on that video and it was just clickbait. They're not really talking about the thing they said they were going to talk about, or the article doesn't answer your freaking question it was supposed to answer. And so I definitely think, I mean, just from my standpoint of like interacting with content and with ads, like you want to see the thing that you're promised, and you want to delivering on that promise as the marketer and as the company, I think is really important. And maybe, I don't know, in your experience, like I feel like that piece of it can be overlooked when you're like planning the ad and you're like wanting to do advertising. But you have to like keep the end goal in mind.
Absolutely. And so it's not just about the landing page. It's not just about the campaign setup. It's also about the follow-up, right? So nurture is super important. And if somebody's clicking on your ads and they're viewing your landing page and they're filling out a form, or even if they're abandoning the form, there are workflows that you can set up that'll keep people engaged in your content or keep people engaged in your website and have them coming back, or at least keeping your company top of mind. And so I think there's an opportunity there as well. So when I say you need to be intentional, you need to really think about it from end to end. So top of funnel to bottom of funnel.
One thing I want to add in there is I often see companies using their website homepage as a landing page or just one of the pages already on their website. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that could go in a couple of different ways. Using your homepage for advertising, it's a hard one, right? Because if the idea is that you want people to come to your homepage and immediately convert, I don't think that's going to work. I think you can use it for brand. It's a good brand play to get people to get to your website and start poking around and clicking through. But if you're looking at it for conversions, unless you have a form directly from the top of your homepage screen, like I just would not consider spending a whole bunch of money there.
You mentioned that there's different ways to follow up. And when we're talking about, end to end, the campaign, what are some pieces of content that you think would be good to follow up with when you're talking about like setting up those workflows? Like what are some ways that you could continue the nurturing beyond the ad?
Yeah, so I think similar to ABM, you could do tailored content. The difference with Google Ads is it's not going to get as tailored because you're tending to cohort these people as like, they've clicked on your ads and now what can I do to keep them engaged versus individualized company experience or contact experience. And so for me, at least an example I can give is in the past, I've run a successful content strategy where we would give out a template. So the ad was actually running to a specific board deck type template. And within that template, it was fully customizable. You can make a copy of it and it had everything you needed in there. So resources, like terminology, all of the things that somebody might need to go into a board meeting and be successful. And that campaign turned out really well because it was a tangible item that somebody could download. And it was a very good resource for them. And so it made them come back and say, okay, well, what else do they have? Like, what else can they offer me? And so I think with email nurture specifically or lifecycle marketing, you want to keep those people engaged, right? So you want to give them more content that'll be useful to them. So if you have somebody that comes in and they click on requesting a demo, they fill out the form, they want a demo. Obviously, that's where sales comes in. You're going to have to qualify them first and make sure they're an accurate fit, but that's where sales comes in. If somebody comes in and they download a piece of content, then they're looking for something specific and you have to make sure that you get them what they're looking for. And so if I come in and I want a board deck template, maybe I also want some resources on how to present this data, right? And so that's something I would follow up with. It's like, okay, you've downloaded our template. Here's some additional resources on how to present this data and how to make it impactful, or maybe join our webinar and see how we do it, or, keeping people engaged in the content that they've downloaded is a really good follow-up, in my opinion.
I think that comes back to the whole purpose of this show too. It's content logistics. So why are we talking about paid media? It's because for paid media to work, you need good content. Like you said before, the landing page needs to be simple, easy to understand, convert them. And I love your idea of having freebies of actual good, valuable content, right? We can't just give them garbage just to get their email. So I think I just really love that, and it just ties back into the purpose of what we're trying to do with this show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. What I wanted to ask was when you're thinking about this, like I'm wondering if you have a process for how you kind of map out all these different elements, because if I had to guess, I would guess that most people don't sit down and map it all out beforehand. It's probably like, oh no, we have this, or we want to do an ad and now we have to do a landing page. It's just, I feel like it spirals so quickly because you can create an endless amount of touch points. So what are some ways that you might like stay organized and map all this out in the beginning?
Yeah. So a lot of people don't think about project management as an important part of being a growth marketer. However, I think it is crucial. Project management is so important as a growth marketer because you have to really think about the end-to-end experience. And so, at least for me, when I start planning out a campaign, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to meet with my team and understand their needs and their goals. And then from there, I'm going to structure like the ideas behind the campaign. So what are we going to run? Are we looking at content? Are we looking at brands? Are we looking at conversions? What do we need to get started? And then from there, I'm going to map out, okay, do we need a landing page? Do we need an additional resource? Do we need like an influencer in the space? Like, how are we going to get people in the door? And so from there, I'm going to do keyword research. So if I'm moving into content, I'm going to start doing as much keyword research about that as possible. If I'm moving into brand, I'm going to start doing as much keyword research as possible. And then I'm kind of mapping out those keywords based on how much they cost, like the top of bid versus top of page bid versus the lower end of that. And then I'm going to look at headlines and descriptions. I'm going to map out how those are going to look because I want to make sure that they match the keywords to have maximum ad strength. And then if I need creative, so if I want to run a display campaign, what does that look like? How does it tie back to the content? And then how does it tie back to the landing page? I want to make sure all of these pieces together, like they make sense or they work together or they're similar in style and brand and they match the flow of things. And so that's really an important piece of what I do specifically for my campaigns.
I love that. I think that's a really important piece that, you know, sometimes you don't always have the luxury of time to map it all out. And sometimes you are just like working on the fly and putting things together as best as you can. I mean, small, scrappy marketing teams, like that's just how it goes. But I love the idea that as you go, you can plan out better. And when you know all the different puzzle pieces, you can kind of like get those, you know, working in harmony up front, I think is a really important piece to the overall marketing strategy. We wanted to present you with the hypothetical situation of having 3 different ad budgets. So starting small with $100, then we've got $1,000, which actually is like something that we often hear. Here's $1,000. What can you do with it? And then a $10,000 ad budget. I know that they can go much higher than that, but let's say we've got these 3 ad budgets. And Baylee and I want to talk through with you, what would you do with that? What if you were presented with these 3 different budgets, what can be done?
I know we're talking about the 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, that type of thing. But I think $100 might be too small to start. Even for those smaller like marketing teams, I think maybe $1,000 is a really good starting point. At that point, you're able to at least get an idea. You can run your campaign for multiple weeks. Like you're going to get more data back than if you were just spending $100. Not saying it's impossible and you can't do it, but in my personal opinion, it's really small.
I liked where you're going with that. So what is the ideal budget? If it's like going to be small, $100 is too small. What's like the smallest budget? And then what's maybe like, what's the outcome? What's the power behind $1,000 if that's the recommendation?
I think you have to consider a number of things when you're looking at your advertising budgets. You have your smaller, scrappy marketing teams where you're wearing multiple hats and you're doing multiple jobs, and your growth marketer might also be your product marketer and your lifecycle marketer. And that person might need to get in front of, running the ads. When you have such a small budget, you have to be really, really intentional about who you're advertising to, the type of campaigns that you're running. And I mean, that's the same as if you were spending $100,000 a month or $10,000 a month. But when you're spending such a small amount of money, it's important to kind of narrow down the audience as much as possible. So that way you're getting in front of the right people and you're not wasting those ad dollars. And a big part of spending that low amount of money would be probably, so if we're looking at $100, if you're looking at $10 a day, that's 10 days, right? Your campaigns are going to be over before a 2-week period. And typically it takes a week for your campaigns to even learn. You're going to go through like a week-long learning phase. And so it's not really enough time, it's not really enough money to get in front of your audience. Now, I'm not saying it's impossible. I mean, a very small local company, you'll probably get like 3 to 4 weeks of data and your ads will have a good learning phase. And then you'll figure out what's working for you and what's not working for you. And then if you're starting to see really good results, you can add more money because like your ROI is better, right? Or if you're starting to see like, okay, we spent $1,000, it's not great. What do we need to fix? What do we need to improve on? And a lot of times the Google Ads platform will give you those suggestions, but it's good to have somebody in-house or even have some resources that can help you figure out, okay, maybe the content's not resonating, or maybe it's just the landing page isn't good, or maybe it'll give you an idea of going back and looking at things and trying to figure out what works best for you. But yeah, like I said, I think a small budget of $100 is fine for like a localized company or somebody who's really just getting started and trying to get their feet wet in Google Ads. But at that point, I would start around like $1,000.
A question I get from clients a lot is just, how are my ads doing? Are they doing okay? What would you say to those clients? What KPIs are you going to look at to see what the health of the ad or the ads are? What would you look at to see how they're doing?
Yes. So first I'd understand the campaign goals. So if it's clicks, I would look at the number of clicks. I would look at the cost per click. Are they spending too much to attain a click? Who are they competing against? Google does a really good job of giving you auction insights so you can see who you're competing against in the space for specific keywords. And if you're looking at conversions, I would look at your conversion data, cost per conversion, conversion value. If you have a value assigned, this is really good data for you. If you're looking at impression share, I would look at how many impressions you're getting on a campaign. Look at the total cost per impression, cost per thousand, like what is the bare minimum you're willing to spend to get this many impressions, or like how are you competing against other people? And so I think looking at a lot of those important performance metrics are very relevant. But also, I would consider the ad health itself, right? So Google also gives you an ad strength goals. So you'll have poor, fair, good, and excellent. And typically you want your ads to be between good and excellent, because I don't know if it's true, but I think that they say that if your ads are in good or excellent, they tend to be shown more than something that's fair or poor. And so if you're competing against other companies who have these really good, robust ads and like their landing pages are stellar and like, it's hard to compete with them. And so you want to make sure that you're doing something similar.
Jenna, what's your tech stack? We've talked about a couple of different tools, and it sounds like a lot can be done within the platform, within Google. But what are some other tools that you're using to do this keyword research, optimize landing pages? What tools are you using?
Within the platform itself, I like to use 2 different areas. I like to use the keyword finder. So you can actually go in and discover search volume and keyword intent and like how well keywords are performing. And then you can actually plan out those keywords directly in the platform. So if you want to, let's say you want to run a campaign like a month or so from now, you can go in and build that out, what that looks like. And then you'll have that in there when you're ready to go back and build the new campaign. And then there's also the performance planner. So it's not 100% accurate all the time, but I think when you go in and you want to get some forecasted data, it's good. It's a good starting point. So you can kind of see how your campaigns are going to perform over like a 90-day period. And you can go in and adjust the budgets too. So if you want to see like how much you're going to spend and then what the potential performance is going to look like, the performance planner is good for that. And then outside of the Google Ads platform, I like to use a lot of different tools. So I use like Screaming Frog and get an understanding out of like landing page performance or SEO for specific pages within the website. Because if I want to send somebody to a page, I want to make sure the page looks good, that there's no broken links, that the form is working, that sort of thing, that there's good content on the page, if it resonates with the keywords that I'm bidding on. And then I also look at WordStream has this Google Ads performance grader. And so sometimes I like to use that. It's not the most accurate representation, but it does a really good job of giving you like a grade on your ads. And so you can see like how much wasted spend you've had. You can see like how your keywords are performing, competitive analysis, that sort of thing. And then there's different tools like SEMrush, there's HubSpot. You can look at your ad performance in those platforms. But at least from the planning perspective, I do a lot of it directly in the platform.
It's cool. I didn't realize that you could do all of that inside of the platform, but yeah, I think it's great to know about different tools because half of the ones that you mentioned I wasn't aware of, and I'm going to go use them for some of my clients after this. So that will be great. Jenna, one of the things that we want to do with all of our guests moving forward, and sort of like a fun way to wrap up the show, is to ask you about what your biggest content ick is. So it can be related to advertising, it can be related to Google Ads, or it can be something completely different. But we want to know, what is Jenna Quick's biggest marketing ick?
This is so funny because I don't know that I've ever been asked this question.
Good.
I guess the biggest marketing ick is some of the terminology that we use, like let's circle back, or like, I don't know, things like that. So, or can we table this discussion and then come back to it? Or I don't know, things like that. Because as a performance marketer, I'm very in the weeds and I can't like I have to report on it, or otherwise things are going to get lost because your data's changing every single day. And so when I hear things like, let's table this discussion, or can we circle back, or that type of thing, I don't know, it gives me the ick. I don't know, like that's a hard question.
That's great.
I love that.
If
Yeah.
you really start dissecting all the things that we say in the corporate world, it's hilarious. And there are a lot of people on TikTok have been like making fun of what people say in the corporate
Yeah.
world. And yeah, and then once you hear it, like you cannot unhear it. And when someone says something, you're like, oh gosh.
Yeah, I have some like bandwidth. It's like, oh, I
Mhm.
can't help you, I don't have the bandwidth. Or let's break this down in silos, or like break down the silos of it. Deliverable. That's a fun one.
Whoa.
I'm not a huge fan of that one. I know a lot of companies use it. We use it a lot.
Yeah, I actually like that. I like a good deliverable.
It could mean so many things, though.
Yes.
Like
Um,
anything.
As a growth marketer, I think one of my biggest corporate jargon icks is, I've said it a couple times in this interview, but because I'm conditioned to say it, but in the weeds and low-hanging fruit.
Oh yeah, no.
Yep.
Low-hanging fruit is the worst.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch what I say now because I feel like I say those things all the time.
Well, I have icks that I also like. I'll say them sometimes, and I'm like, why did I say that? Thank you so much, Jenna, for being on this show today. We really appreciate your time and your expertise. I learned a lot. I hope all of you did as well who are listening. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us at marketersindemand.com/content logistics. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Content Logistics.
If you enjoyed listening, you can follow Content Logistics wherever you get your favorite podcasts.
Or access all episodes at marketersindemand.com. Bye.